This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, and welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I am your host, Alex Masfer. Before I start talking anything sports, I want to remind you guys to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode, so you get those alerts on your phone, your laptop, however you may be listening, and you always know when we drop an episode and you never miss an episode. Also, make sure to leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcasting app you are listening to this on. We would really appreciate that as well. And also follow us on all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We have all of those platforms, and we love to interact with you guys on there. So again, whatever platforms you are on social media-wise, we are on as well. And if you could follow us there, we would greatly appreciate it. We would love to interact with you, so make sure you do that. We have a fantastic show for you guys today. A little bit later on in the episode, I'm going to be talking about some extensions that got done today in the NFL, as it was the deadline for some teams to reach long-term agreements with players who were on those, franchise tags, tender tags, some other salary cap maneuvering. So there was a lot of extensions done today. I'll get into some of those. Also, I want to talk about some top landing spots for Washington Wizards guard Bradley Beal, who everyone has deemed as the next superstar to potentially move to another team. And stick around to the end of the episode. I'm going to give you my top 10 NFL teams that are the most interesting to watch this season. So not the best NFL teams, not the worst, just who are the most watchable teams this season, who have the most interesting storylines. Again, the most interesting NFL watches, top 10 list of those teams coming in at the end of the episode. So make sure you stick around for that. But we're going to start off with America's team, the Dallas Cowboys. Now, like I mentioned a few moments ago, today was the deadline for a lot of extensions for players who were on transition tags, tender tags, franchise tags, all those tags. Today at 4 p.m., I believe, or maybe it was even 6 p.m., was the deadline for when you could reach a long-term extension with those players before they just have to play out the season on their tag or hold out. Those are the big decisions. And while there were a lot of players signed, like Myles Garrett, Chris Jones, also Derrick Henry got an extension. I'll talk about all those players in the next segment. There is one very notable player who did not reach an extension, and it was not expected to be reached either, and that's Dallas Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott. Now, when it comes to the quarterback position, usually contract negotiations are easy compared to other positions. Not a lot of quarterbacks see the franchise tag. Not a lot of quarterbacks even make it to this stage of the, where their contract is almost up and there isn't an extension unless they're up there in age or they're just not good at the quarterback position. But not a lot of starting quarterbacks that the team has said multiple times as their franchise quarterback have gotten franchise tagged, have even reached to this level, have been struggling to make a long-term deal. The only really notable one that comes to mind is Kirk Cousins, who is now the Minnesota Vikings quarterback after he was the Washington Redskins quarterback for a long time. Now, I don't usually side with the team when it comes to contract negotiations for players. I am a very pro-player sports fan. I believe that players deserve the money, and I believe that a lot of athletes, specifically in the National Football League, when it comes to different positions outside of quarterback, running back, offensive lineman, wide receiver even, it makes it more difficult for, me to say that, I'd side with the team on how much they should make. Because again, these players are really good. They're the best at what they do. And again, a lot of times I, side with the players believing they deserve more. I sided with Le'Veon Bell during the holdout, some other teams like that. But for once, I side with the team here when it comes to Dak Prescott. Now, I, like many other members in the sports media community, have talked about Dak Prescott and this contract negotiations at length. It seems that this sort of topic has never really gone away from the Cowboys, and I think we're almost reaching year 3 of this talk. I mean, ever since Dak Prescott's second year in the NFL ended, I feel like this has been going on and this has been a topic of conversation. And it seems that every other quarterback has been getting an extension when they want it. Guys like Kirk Cousins, guys like Carson Wentz, who Dak Prescott gets compared to a ton. Guys like Jimmy Garoppolo, guys like, Patrick Mahomes just got his. Deshaun Watson, whenever he wants his, will get his. And I'm assuming Lamar Jackson at the end of next offseason will get his as well. So everyone seems to be getting their money except for Dak Prescott. And I feel like everyone's kind of siding with Dak. Oh, poor Dak. He's not getting the contract he deserves, not getting the contract he wanted. And in my opinion, the Dallas Cowboys are doing the right thing here by holding true to the stance of the offer they've made. And in fact, I really do believe that Dak Prescott is already getting a generous offer from the Dallas Cowboys. Now, Dak Prescott, in my opinion, is a good quarterback. I don't think he's a great quarterback. Do I think he's a franchise quarterback? Yes. Do I think he's a great leader? Absolutely. Do I think he's an Iron Man, really durable, always going to be out there on the field? Yes. Do I think he's inconsistent? Yes. Do I think he has average arm talent? Yes. Do I think he can't make big throws sometimes in the big moments? 100%. Has he not done anything for the Dallas Cowboys lately to prove that he deserves a contract up in the upper 30s, low 40s, or even $45 million a year? 100%. There's a phrase in the NFL, and there's a phrase in life, and there's a phrase in business that really, for me, describes and explains this entire situation for Dak Prescott well. And that is, it's not what you've done for me, it's what have you done for me lately. That is what comes to Dak Prescott. That's what it matters for Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott, since his rookie season, has been a 500 quarterback in the National Football League. Now, there is another quarterback in the league who I think is more talented than Dak Prescott. Not as healthy, but definitely a more talented player. And after he had a fantastic season in 2015, was a 500 quarterback, since then. That quarterback just got a contract for the league minimum. That's Cam Newton. So Cam Newton, similar to Dak Prescott, had one really big year, one fantastic year, looked like one of the best players in the entire league. Has been a 500 quarterback since then. And he got a veteran minimum contract. Now, does Cam deserve a vet minimum contract? No. But does Dak Prescott deserve to be the highest paid quarterback in the National Football League? Absolutely not. Now, again, like I just said, Dak Prescott has been a 500 quarterback since that rookie year where he went 13-3, took the league by storm. And again, Dak is a good quarterback. He's not great. But the Dallas Cowboys have missed the playoffs the last two seasons, had a very disappointing 8-8 last year, and everybody pointed the fingers at Jason Garrett. That's fair. That's fine. I understand that. Jason Garrett is not a good head coach and was effectively removed this season. He was fired at the end of the year. Actually, I don't know if he was fired. I think they just never really negotiated a new contract. Now, they've brought in a better head coach, in my opinion, Mike McCarthy, who has had success in the NFC, has won a Super Bowl with a guy like Aaron Rodgers before, knows what it takes to build a team. I think he's a more old-school football coach. Like I mentioned before, I think Mike McCarthy is the perfect head coach of the Dallas Cowboys because he's a good enough coach to lead a team to a Super Bowl, as we've seen with Aaron Rodgers. But he's not a high-profile enough coach where he's going to take the spotlight away from the Cowboys brand, and specifically Jerry Jones. It still feels very much like Jerry Jones' team. When a coach that was there like Jimmy Johnson, felt more like, Jimmy Johnson was the guy, not much Jerry Jones. But this is a very Jerry Jones-esque team. It's always been about Jerry Jones. Now, getting back to Dak Prescott, I said that the max I would go to pay Dak Prescott, when I've talked about this before, is $33 million. That is the max I would go. If Dak Prescott wants anything else, he could walk, in my opinion, and try to get that money somewhere else. Now, reportedly, Dak Prescott did get an offer today/last night, saying today as in the day before you're watching this, on the deadline day, and the night before that as well. Apparently, the Dallas Cowboys made one last effort to try to get this deal done with Dak Prescott, and it was reportedly $35 million a year and over $100 million guaranteed. Dak Prescott declined that. Dak Prescott should fire his agent and find a new one. Or he needs to really do a reality check and try to see what type of quarterback he is and what type of player he is. Again, $35 million and over $100 million would place him in top 3 in the NFL, or at least top 5. In payment. Dak Prescott is not a top 5 quarterback on anybody's list, including Jerry Jones. So let's start off there, okay? Dak Prescott is not a top 5 quarterback in the league, and if Jerry Jones was being truthful, he would not say Dak Prescott is top 5 either. I don't even think I have Dak Prescott in top 10 NFL quarterbacks either. He's in that tier that I mentioned so many times on this show. He's a franchise quarterback. He can win you games. You can even get to a Super Bowl with him. He's not an elite arm talent. He's not a Pro Bowler. He's a Pro Bowler. He's not an All-Pro. He's not a top 10 quarterback in the league. He's not up there with Deshaun Watson. He's not up there with Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, so many other guys, because he doesn't elevate his team and he doesn't elevate players. Dak Prescott is a product of his environment always. Always. When you look at his rookie season, everything was clicking for Dak Prescott. Ezekiel Elliott took the NFL by storm. The defense was good and the defense was healthy. The offensive line was the best in the league. Zeke, breaks the rookie rushing record, and all of a sudden you go 13-3 in a division where the Eagles have an off year. Perfect. Makes a lot of sense. Everything clicks right for them. What has happened to the Dallas Cowboys the last 2 seasons? Things aren't clicking right. What about specifically the second half of last season when players were getting injured? The offensive line wasn't as great anymore. Ezekiel Elliott that year, not last season, but the year before when they also missed the playoffs. Why did Dak Prescott have such a bad year? Ezekiel Elliott was missing games. The whole suspension was looming over the team. Constant excuses for Dak Prescott. And now this year, after collapsing the second half of the year where he was an MVP candidate the first half, the defense gets injured and the defense isn't playing well. The offensive line isn't as good as it used to be, and all of a sudden the Dallas Cowboys are a disaster and a mediocre football team and go 8-8, and Dak Prescott had a chance to take them to the playoffs, I think in Philadelphia, on that one throw to Michael Gallup, and he missed it. He missed that throw. That is the difference between a player like him and a player like Deshaun Watson, a player like Patrick Mahomes, a player like Lamar Jackson. He's a product of his environment. He's a product of the system. He doesn't elevate others. People elevate him. He does not elevate Amari Cooper. He has gotten better because Amari Cooper is there. He does not make Amari Cooper a better receiver. Amari Cooper has had just as good years in Oakland with Derek Carr as the quarterback. He's not been any better production-wise or any worse than with Dak Prescott. He's just been a good receiver. That's why he gets paid $100 million to be a good receiver, to be Dak Prescott's number one receiver. Because they know, Jerry Jones and the Cowboys know, if you let Amari Cooper leave and you keep Dak Prescott is not the same quarterback as he was with Amari Cooper. He's significantly worse. And we know this with Dak Prescott. And it's hard for Cowboys fans to accept. I know. I understand. But he's a product of this system. He is a system quarterback. And again, I don't think a system quarterback is a negative thing. A system quarterback makes sense. There's a lot of players who are system quarterbacks nowadays. Drew Brees may be one of them, even though I think he's better than Dak Prescott is right now. But Dak Prescott, again, is a product of his environment. And it's not what have you done for me, it's what have you done for me lately. The biggest thing that Dak Prescott has leverage-wise in this contract negotiation is that he went 13-3 his rookie year. And that does not matter anymore. It's out the window. Also, if you're Mike McCarthy and a new coaching staff and you're implementing a new offensive system that you're bringing in from Green Bay and the other things you've learned while your years off of, after your year off of coaching, and you're bringing it all in the Dallas Cowboys, why would you sign a quarterback to a major extension when you don't even know if Dak Prescott is going to be good in this system, if he's going to be better than he was before in this system? How do you know that? And again, for Dak Prescott, for the Cowboys to still be generous and offer, Dak Prescott, who already signed his franchise tag, by the way, so he wasn't going to hold out. So he was already saying that he was going to play this season. To still offer him $35 million a year and over $100 million in fully guaranteed money, and for Dak Prescott to decline that, it's absolutely wild to me. And the last thing I want to talk about in this topic, after I've already made my point that I think Dak Prescott does not deserve $45 million, and I don't think he'll get it for the Cowboys. Dak Prescott's brother had a tweet out that said something like, I'm paraphrasing here, but I never rooted for the Cowboys, and I'm starting to feel like I know why. And to wrap it up, he pretty much said at the end, who knows how long I'll be rooting for them anymore. Pretty much hinting at Dak Prescott could leave the Dallas Cowboys soon. I want you all to think about this right now. If Dak Prescott hit the open market in the quarterbacks right now, became a free agent this second, the Dallas Cowboys cut him, they're fed up, for whatever, no reason, no team backlash, no mistakes, no arrest, nothing like that. Just cut, became a free agent. What team is signing Dak Prescott? Think about it, seriously. I can't name more than 3. I think 3 teams would maybe be interested in Dak Prescott if he hit the open market as a free agent right now, as a starter. I think it would be the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think the New England Patriots might kick tires, even though I don't think there would be a high chance. Maybe a team like the Washington Redskins, if they don't believe in Cam Newton, or not Cam Newton, Dwayne Haskins. If they didn't believe in Dwayne Haskins down there in Washington, maybe they would kick the tires. A team like Carolina, if they thought that Dak Prescott was an upgrade over, Teddy Bridgewater. Those are the 3 to 4 teams that I believe would actually be in the running to sign Dak Prescott right now. Dak Prescott is not some hot commodity that people are waiting and salivating at the chance to get like some of these other guys who just signed tags were. If Derrick Henry hit the free agent market today, you know how many teams would line up to sign him? Chris Jones, Myles Garrett, all these other guys that got their long-term deal extensions done. Dak Prescott is not one of them. He is not this hot commodity that people are waiting to get. He is a good quarterback. Is he a franchise quarterback? Yes. But in comparison to some of these other guys, again, like I said, $33 million is the max I would go for Dak Prescott. Carson Wentz makes $32 million a year. Carson Wentz is better than Dak Prescott at every single aspect of being an NFL quarterback besides staying healthy, and durability, obviously. And I get that. Carson Wentz has had his issues, and I've had this debate on the show why I think Carson Wentz is just a way better quarterback than Dak Prescott. I won't get into it again. But to put it into perspective, Carson Wentz makes $32 million. Kirk Cousins, who's similar to Dak Prescott, got kind of stuck on this franchise tag train, makes $32 million. And Jimmy Garoppolo makes $27 million. So again, I said at a minimum, Dak Prescott should probably be making 26 to 27, and the max he should be making is 33. Right? If you think that Dak Prescott is so much better than Carson Wentz, when he's really not. He's not more talented. He's not a better quarterback in any way, shape, or form besides durability. But let's say you call them even, and you think that Dak Prescott should get a little bit more for financial compensation for being durable, being healthy. Fine. Make him have $33 million a year. For Dak Prescott to get $3 more million a year than Carson Wentz and Kirk Cousins, and almost $8 million more than Jimmy Garoppolo, who just went to a Super Bowl, for a quarterback who becomes a completely different, by the way, I've mentioned this before, but according to Pro Football Focus, Dak Prescott, when the play breaks down and the first read isn't open, aka Amari Cooper isn't open, is a completely different quarterback. He goes from a top 12 quarterback in the league when the first read is open to a bottom 12 quarterback in the league when the first and second read aren't open. $35 million is generous. And he said no. Again, get a new agent, Dak Prescott, because you need to wake up and realize who you are. You are a good quarterback who's the product of the system. Does Dak Prescott realize that if he takes a contract that's up there in the 40s or in the high 30s, that they can't bring guys back? That they can't re-sign some of those stud defensive players? Some of those offensive linemen who make up the best ones in the league? Ezekiel Elliott, if he ever wants to redo his contract? Michael Gallup when he wants his money? CeeDee Lamb 3 years in the future when he wants his money? All of these things matter, Dak. Dak Prescott needs to realize this, that if Dak Prescott, Tom Brady for years and years and years took way less money than he should because he wanted to bring players to New England and he wanted to win. Dak Prescott wants $45 million for a guy who knows he needs good players to win around him. He can't overcome bad coaching. We've seen this. He can't overcome Jason Garrett. He can't overcome Ezekiel Elliott being suspended a couple of games. He can't overcome a defense, not doing well the second half of a season. He can't overcome a guy like Amari Cooper disappearing against the New England Patriots. He can't overcome these things. He's not the reason why you win football games. He never has been. It's always been the system. It's always been the receivers. It's always been Zeke. It's always been the offensive line, the defense. Dak Prescott has never elevated the Dallas Cowboys. And again, when your main selling point of Dak Prescott is, don't you remember when he went 13-3 his rookie year? That's almost 4 years ago now. Again, it's not what have you done for me. It's what have you done for me lately. And lately, Dak Prescott has been an average NFL quarterback going 8-8 every year. So what should he be paid like? An average NFL quarterback. And the fact that Dallas gave him a $35 million offer a year and Dak Prescott declined it is absolutely mind-blowing to me. I think Dak Prescott will be the Cowboy quarterback for a long time because I really do believe he'll eventually cave. Or the Dallas Cowboys will cave maybe. It will be very Cowboys. And again, we're talking about an owner here, Jerry Jones, who is not like a cheap owner like everyone accuses the Bengals owner of being or the Redskins owner of being. Jerry Jones is not afraid to open up his checkbook and pay guys, overpay guys. Amari Cooper got $100 million. DeMarcus Lawrence got his money. And a lot of offensive linemen got his. Zeke got his. It's just Dak Prescott that he can't seem to get a deal with. Because Jerry Jones is a smart businessman and he's not going to overpay for a quarterback that's gone 8-8 the last 2 seasons. They haven't made the playoffs the last 2 seasons. And just let Carson Wentz and the Philadelphia Eagles steamroll them the last 2 weeks of the year. He's not going to do it. All right, so it's going to be interesting to see this Cowboys situation play out. Dak will obviously play on the franchise tag this year, and we'll see what happens the year after that. Now, we're going to take a quick break. On the other side of the break, I mentioned some of those players, Chris Jones, Myles Garrett, Derrick Henry. I'm going to be talking about their deals and their teams and if they can recapture some of the magic that they had last season, specifically with the Chiefs and Titans. We'll get into that right after this break.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I just finished talking about Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys, how, again, they did not get a deal done on the NFL deadline day. And given that it is, or was, the NFL deadline day today, there were some deals that actually got done, some major moves, some guys who were on the franchise tag that really looked like they weren't going to get a long-term extension done, did. And I wanted to talk about them and their teams and how I think they could potentially do this season now that their, contract thing is all settled. Let's start off with the Kansas City Chiefs and defensive tackle / defensive end Chris Jones, who is one of the best defensive tackles in the league. I have him at number 3 behind Aaron Donald, DeForest Buckner, and then I would probably put Chris Jones there. Guys like Calais Campbell, some others are also there as well. But Chris Jones is an absolute animal, one of the best in the league. And the Kansas City Chiefs have somehow managed to really run it back. Now, every Super Bowl team, after they win, always says, run it back. But that rarely happens, back-to-back Super Bowl champions. But not just that, but also, just because it's hard for them to bring, people in money-wise and keep everybody together. And like I've mentioned before on the show, when a team goes to a Super Bowl, whether they win or lose, everybody immediately wants to get paid. Everybody wants their contract because they've reached their peak of, NFL, worthiness, NFL contract, usefulness. If that makes any sense. Like, they've reached the peak of showing here's a better way to phrase it. Showing the abilities of what they can do, because they most likely had one of the best seasons of their career, because they all went to the Super Bowl and maybe even won the Super Bowl. And that Chris Jones is included in that. But the Kansas City Chiefs have actually managed to run it back. The offensive line will be back. Mahomes will be back with an extension. Tyreek Hill will be there. Damian Williams with the addition of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Chris Jones, who was in serious doubts if he would be back or not, he's back now. Tyrann Mathieu, some other guys as well. And if any team is going to be a dynasty in the National Football League, post-Patriots dynasty, it's going to be Kansas City. And now, I never really considered Kansas City to be a serious dynasty potentially, again, because it's so rare with all the money and everything like that. Players never can really seem to get it done. It never really seems to be able to work out that way. And even with the Patriots, not a lot of times were they able to run it back with the exact same roster. The Patriots usually would get rid of guys, bring different guys in, and the Patriots would have almost different rosters every year. They would win different ways. Tom Brady's one with teams that, were ground and pound, air raid, completely different sides of the offensive spectrum. And that's just how it works with the New England Patriots. But with the Chiefs, they've really decided to just bring everybody back, and everyone has a long-term extension, it appears, to really be able to stay with the Chiefs for a long majority of time. And, I think there are some teams that are serious threats to Kansas City. Baltimore leading the way. I think New Orleans is a really good team. I think Seattle, if they can get Clowney and potentially Antonio Brown, is a really good team as well. Even in their own division, I think the Denver Broncos are going to be really good. Some other teams that are young and upcoming that I think could be good as well. The New England Patriots, if they can, if Cam Newton is any resemblance of 2015 Cam, are going to be a threat. But overwhelmingly so, I really do believe that the Kansas City Chiefs going into this season are still the best team in the league. And usually that's not any sort of news for the team that just won the Super Bowl. Usually the team that wins the Super Bowl is the favorite or the co-favorite to win the Super Bowl again next year. But this is different for me. I think Kansas City is almost overwhelmingly the best team in the league. Now, I don't think they have the best roster in the league. I think that goes to, Baltimore. I think top to bottom they're stacked. But I know it really just comes down to me with Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes for me is the X factor. He is so good. He is so great. He is so talented that the Kansas City Chiefs are never out of a football game. And there are flaws with other quarterbacks, even great quarterbacks. Deshaun Watson has an injury problem sometimes. He's already been injured twice in his career majorly. Not to mention, on top of that, he's limited by his wide receiving core, his offensive line, his coaching staff, his ownership, his division is tough. Everything on there is stacked against Deshaun Watson. But for a guy like Patrick Mahomes, there's no red flags. There's no red flags with the Kansas City Chiefs. Even Baltimore has the most stacked roster in the league, and they're coming off with the league MVP and a top 5 coach in John Harbaugh, and the division is, but everything, even for the Ravens, I find holes in their game, in their team. For example, the Ravens, a quarterback Lamar Jackson is 0-2 in the playoffs. How can I trust Lamar Jackson in the playoffs? How can I trust him in the big moments? Lamar Jackson is not a quarterback that's built to play from behind either. When a team gets up on them 7-0, 14-0, 17-0, multiple, score leads against the Baltimore Ravens, they seem to crumble. They don't seem to get those comeback victories. While Patrick Mahomes, all he's done specifically in the last playoffs, he came back 3 times in the playoffs. In all 3 games, he came back from behind and won, including 24-0 against the Chiefs. Against the Titans in the AFC Championship game, against the Texans in the first round. He also came back against Ryan Tannehill and the Titans and Derrick Henry in the AFC Championship game. And in the Super Bowl, he was down 3/4 of the way through the game and was pretty much outplayed and threw 2 picks. And even then, they still came back and win. And I think that, for me, is the biggest X factor when it comes to the season and when it comes to Kansas City, and why I believe they have a legitimate chance at a dynasty. It's hard to predict a dynasty because, again, injuries, bringing guys back financially, but not just because they brought everybody back. On top of that, Patrick Mahomes has never lost a game by more than 7 points. And he's already won a Super Bowl before he's lost a game by more than 7 points. He is never out of the game. Every time. There's no score on the scoreboard where you can have enough realistically to secure a victory against Patrick Mahomes. It appears at any time. And it's scary for the league and it's scary to watch. So again, I think the Chiefs have a real chance at building a dynasty and bringing back Chris Jones, a guy who I think a week ago it looked like that he was either going to get traded or play out this season on the franchise tag and leave in free agency. It was really unlikely that he was going to be able to come back. All of a sudden does a complete 180 and he's brought back in and everybody's running it back for the Chiefs. Again, legitimate chance of the dynasty. The next team I want to talk about is the Tennessee Titans, who really caught lightning in a bottle last season, led by Derrick Henry. Once Mike Vrabel, the head coach, made the transition from from Marcus Mariota to Ryan Tannehill at quarterback. Now, I like a lot about the Titans. I think Mike Vrabel is a criminally underrated head coach. When I made the list, it was either my last episode or the episode before. I think it was my last episode. I had Mike Vrabel as a top 10 coach in the league, 100%, no questions asked. And, he made that switch between from Marcus Mariota to Ryan Tannehill. And yes, they rode on the coattails of Derrick Henry. And he was another guy who they paid Tannehill first before Henry, and everybody freaked out. And Henry signed the franchise tag, and it looked like he wasn't going to get paid. He was going to be a potential running back, free agent in 2021. People were going to be lining up to pay him. And on the deadline day, they reached a 4-year extension worth $50 million, which in my opinion is underpaid. I think Derrick Henry should be at least the first or second highest paid running back in the league. I think this makes him top 5. I don't think he's the best running back in the league, by the way. I think he's number 2 behind Christian McCaffrey, who is the highest paid, deservingly so because of what he does in the passing game. But back to Derrick Henry, he's just an absolute freak of nature. He's like 6'3", 225 pounds, maybe even more. Absolute beast. He's huge. He's just a freak athlete, and he's one of the best running backs in the league, and deservedly is paid. But I want to focus in on the Titans, because can they recreate what happened last year? Last year, they caught the league by surprise. They won. Did they win the division? I think Houston won the division. They got second, was a wild card team. Made it all the way to the AFC Championship game, beat the New England Patriots, beat the Baltimore Ravens as an old school football team. Run the ball, play defense. Run the ball, play defense. Now, that formula hasn't been the main formula in the NFL for years and years now. The NFL has moved way towards more an air raid offense with college-oriented offensive programs, 5 wide, the spread offense, distributing guys like Cliff Kingsbury, guys like Sean McVay, guys like Kyle Shanahan, these young offensive minds. Mike Vrabel is way different from that. He is an old school, hard-nosed, badass, physical type of guy that wants to run the ball down your throat and take the ball away from you and then go play defense and be the more physical team. And did it work last year? Absolutely. It must be hard as hell to build a team that out-physicals the New England Patriots with the best defensive coach in the league, Bill Belichick, and then the Baltimore Ravens to out-physical them, beat them both on the road, to beat New England in the playoffs, to beat Baltimore in Baltimore and the cold in the playoffs as well. Absolutely incredible stuff, and they hung around with the Chiefs for a long time as well. They are a physical football team that, again, runs the ball and plays defense. The question is, is this lightning in a bottle? Was this a one-year wonder? Or does this team have a legitimate chance to be a consistent winner and run that division consistently? Because I really do believe Tennessee has a chance now that Houston seems to be on the downfall. Now, the other teams in the division are interesting, right? You look at the Jacksonville Jaguars, they're absolutely tanking for Trevor Lawrence. They're going to win 0 games. They're going to get Trevor Lawrence, and they're going to try to rebuild their franchise that way. So even when they do get Trevor Lawrence, while he will be really, really good as we saw when Andrew Luck was his rookie year, again, a transcendent NFL talent. I've talked at length about him as well. They're still going to be a year or two away just because they're Jacksonville. They got to get some talent around him, right? And that's not until next year. Now you look at the Indianapolis Colts, who in my opinion have one of the best front offices in the league. Fantastic coach Frank Wright, fantastic roster, fantastic offensive line, the best offensive lineman in the league, Quinn Nelson. Pretty good defense, pretty good wide receiving core. It's just Phillip Rivers is unproven at this stage. What do we know from him? Again, I don't think he's a major upgrade over Jacoby Brissett, and I think I had them going 8-8 or 9-7. And then you look at the Houston Texans, who won the division last year, who have the best quarterback in the division, Deshaun Watson, but not as nearly the defense, the run game, the offensive line, certainly, and the wide receiving core that Tennessee has. Tennessee has A.J. Brown. Tennessee has Derrick Henry. Tennessee has a ton of other guys, a fantastic defense, a great offensive line. I think it's going to come down to one person and one man, and as it always does with the NFL, it comes down to the quarterback. Because this team, the Tennessee Titans, that is, and this coach, Mike Vrabel, in the front office, and the division with Houston being on the downfall, not really upgrading at any position. So going back to Houston, they didn't upgrade at any position this year. Didn't upgrade at offensive line. Didn't upgrade the run game. David Johnson is who knows what at this stage in his career. Lost DeAndre Hopkins, replaced him with Brandon Cooks, who is a unproven commodity at this point. I think they have an overpaying wide receiver core. Kenny Stills. On top of that, you have Brandon Cooks, who everybody says is overpaid as well. Again, surrounding Deshaun Watson with speed makes sense, but getting rid of DeAndre Hopkins, not so much, right? So you take that back, and I don't think Houston got better at any stage this year, at any position. So again, the opportunity is there for the Tennessee Titans to again take this division by storm, win again, get some home playoff games, and continue this mantra of what they are. Now, the question will come up is being a ground and pound physical football team a consistent winning formula in the National Football League now? A lot of people will say no. I will actually argue yes. I think if you consistently can do it and there's no injuries and you consistently have a great run game, consistently have a great offensive line, you will still be a good football team even if passing isn't your number one thing. The Ravens did it last year. They were more of a ground and pound team. I think the Titans are even more ground and pound than the Baltimore Ravens was. But again, it is possible, in my opinion. It is very, 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 very possible to be a consistent winner. But it's going to come down to Ryan Tannehill. Because Ryan Tannehill also caught lightning in a bottle last year. So did Derrick Henry, so did A.J. Brown, so did that whole team. Now, I believe in Derrick Henry, A.J. Brown, Mike Vrabel, the front office, the defense, the offensive line, that when they say that they're not a lightning in a bottle, that this is a consistent winning football team, I believe all those people. The only person I don't believe is Ryan Tannehill, because I saw what he did for the Miami Dolphins, especially towards the end, and he was never that great. He's always an average quarterback. He's in that tier of, he's not even in that tier of franchise quarterback, just doesn't elevate the team, right? That's what Dak Prescott's in. That's what Jimmy Garoppolo's in. I think Tannehill's a tier before that, which is maybe a franchise quarterback and doesn't elevate the team. I would put him as a high-end stopgap. Now, the Titans don't view him like that. They've given him a long-term extension. He gets paid a lot of money to be the starting quarterback of that team. It's up to him now to prove that this was not lightning in a bottle for him last year, which was the best stretch of his career, by the way, that this is legitimate, that he is the franchise there, he is the future there. He's just the one person I don't trust. Do I think he could do it? 100%. I would give a lot of credit to Mike Vrabel and a lot of credit to the team and the roster. Again, Tannehill, similar to Dak Prescott, even though I think Dak's a lot better than Tannehill, is a product of his environment, a product of his system, a product of the roster, a product of, how the game goes. And again, he never threw a lot in the playoffs, never threw for a lot of yards. But if Derrick Henry can be your number one offensive weapon, continue to be that. There's no injuries on the offensive line, no injuries on the defense. A.J. Brown stays healthy and good. and Tannehill can just do what he does best, which is Ryan Tannehill is one of those players that will give you 1 or 2 plays a game where you're like, boom, you made the play there for us. Dak Prescott will give you about 4 or 5 plays a game where, okay, you did that for us. That was all you, Dak. Guys like Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson will give you, almost every play, right? Which is the difference between all of them, right? If Ryan Tannehill can be asked to not do more than he was last year, I think he could do it. I'm just not as confident as it. And finally, the last team that really got a deal done during this extension period and the deadline and the franchise tag and everything like that is the Cleveland Browns, who for once kept a young player that was really talented on the team. David Njoku is a guy who wants out and is expected to be traded before the season starts. But they did retain Myles Garrett, one of the best defensive ends in the league. And Myles Garrett is a great player. Obviously had that disaster last season with the suspension over hitting Mason Rudolph over the head, some crazy stuff there. But bringing back Myles Garrett for the Browns is a good thing. I don't think he was overpaid. He's one of the best pass rushers in the league, and Cleveland has to set a precedent now. If you're young and you come to Cleveland, you might not be super thrilled that you were drafted by Cleveland, but if you put in the work and you're a good player, we will retain you. We are not looking to ship off young talent anymore. We're looking to build a culture here with the players we drafted, which has always been Cleveland's problem. Now, Myles Garrett, again, is coming back now. I don't know if he'll serve a suspension at the beginning of the season. I don't think so. Nothing has been announced. He obviously served it at the end of last season. And I've talked about the Browns at length, so I'll just recap it quickly. This season, again, just like every NFL team, it comes down to Baker Mayfield. There's no more excuses for him. I like Kevin Stefanski as a head coach. This team is incredible. It is the Noah's Ark of football team. 2 good backs, 2 good receivers, 2 good tackles now, 2 good defensive ends, 2 good corners, a good safety, 2 good linebackers, and now 2 good defensive ends, and Myles Garrett is locked up long term. Yes, the division is tough, but Cleveland has a top 10 roster talent-wise. They are probably the second most talented team in that division just because Baltimore is so good. Cleveland doesn't have to win the division. They just have to make the playoffs, in my opinion. You need to win, 9 or 10 games? Especially, really just 9 with the extra playoff spot in both the AFC and NFC. It's on Baker Mayfield now, folks. Baker Mayfield had a terrible season last year. Sure, blame Freddie Kitchens, just like we blame, Jason Garrett for Dak Prescott. But for both of those guys, it's prove it years. For Baker Mayfield, if Baker Mayfield does not do good this year, he will not be the quarterback in Cleveland anymore. He just won't. There is a good quarterback class next season, and somebody else will take a chance on a Trey Lance versus a Baker Mayfield. I would, specifically Kevin Stefanski, who did not draft Baker Mayfield. And the new general manager in Cleveland did not draft Baker Mayfield. The 2 biggest Baker Mayfield fans in the world, besides the Cleveland Brown fans, are John Dorsey and Freddie Kitchens. Both were fired at the end of last season. This is Baker Mayfield's last chance. He has to do it. Lucky for him, I think he will. They have an easier schedule this year. This team reminds me a lot of the Case Keenum-led Minnesota Vikings, where they went 13-3 that year. I don't think they'll be that good. I think they'll go 10-6 and make the playoffs. But again, Baker Mayfield's prove it year is this year. But good for the Browns for actually bringing back a young player that they drafted and developed. They finally hit on a draft pick. Myles Garrett is one of the best defensive ends in the league. They're bringing him back on big money. He deserves every penny of it, as long as he stays out of trouble with everything on the field stuff. One of the first players in NFL history to have on the field issues. Not play style wise, but like in trouble wise. Only other player I can really remember that did that a lot was Vontaze Burfict. He's kind of crazy as well. Alright, we're going to take another short break. On the other side of it, we're going to switch to the NBA. Bradley Beal is a potential person or a player who could really request a trade and be the next NBA superstar on the market. He's not participating in the Orlando bubble. Interesting speculation there. He's been interacting with different guys on the Miami Heat and some other teams on Twitter. A lot of speculation going on, a lot of photoshopping going on Twitter. We'll get into the top Bradley Beal landing spots on the other side of this break.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Thank you so much for continuing to listening through today's episode. We're going to switch gears here to the NBA. Just got finished talking about everything NFL deadline. Some guys who signed some extensions, Dak Prescott, Chris Jones, Myles Garrett, Derrick Henry, some others as well. I want to switch gears now to the NBA. I wanted to talk about this last episode, but I kind of got carried away talking about the MVP odds that came out. But Bradley Beal, a lot of people have pegged as the next guy who will be an NBA superstar that's going to leave his current situation in Washington, go to another team potentially. Now, I don't think there's a higher chance, I think there's a higher chance that a guy like Victor Oladipo leaves versus Bradley Beal, but things have been picking up steam. Beal is not going to be playing in the Orlando bubble. He was interacting with some guys, I think, on the Nuggets on Twitter and as well as the Heat. Some guys there just, kind of chatting it up on Twitter. A lot of speculation, a lot of jersey swaps were happening in the comments section. A lot of people believe Bradley Beal is going to leave. I don't know if Washington will be willing to move him. But again, he's a free agent in 2021. But if you would like to leave before that, it could happen as soon as this season. So I want to give some top landing spots for Bradley Beal because, I think Victor Oladipo is a fantastic player and a star guard. But Bradley Beal is a different animal, okay? Bradley Beal almost averaged, he's pretty much averaging 28, 5 and 5 consistently in the NBA. I think he's only 26 years old. He's an absolutely phenomenal player, and he is a real superstar, one of the best scorers in the league. He's a 3-level scorer, can take it to the rim, shoot the mid-range game, and also, shoot it from deep as well. He's also the main playmaker on the Wizards as well, so he's pretty much Mr. Everything for the Wizards. Now, it hasn't gotten them to the playoffs or any significant wins, but it could be really useful on another team, let's say, to be maybe put them over the hump as a championship contender. So I have a list of teams here that I believe will be super interested. Again, the list is very, very similar to the Victor Oladipo list, but I'm going to explain why I think Beal would be even a step further than Oladipo for a lot of these teams. Now, also keep in mind you're going to have to give up a lot more for Bradley Beal versus a Victor Oladipo. That's that's something interesting too for a team that might be near the championship level and might not have as many pieces to give away as I'll get to in this list. It might be more of a realistic option for them to get Oladipo, but there are some other teams that are desperate for a star and could really, really use somebody like a Bradley Beal. So let's get right into it. Speaking of one of those teams, how about the Atlanta Hawks? All right, so Trae Young is a phenomenal guard. He's one of the best guards in the league already. He's super young. But you know how the NBA works. You need to make your superstars happy, and you need to make them happy quick, otherwise they're going to want to leave. Now, there's been no reports or anything that Trae Young might want out in Atlanta, but 2 years from now, if Atlanta hasn't done anything and is still one of the worst teams in the league, and Trae Young's averaging 40 points a game by then? Who knows? Maybe that's the new normal. Then what the heck? Then people are going to be angry. Then Trae Young might want out. So you want a guy who could automatically, make the Atlanta Hawks playoff contenders. That doesn't be championship contenders, but get Atlanta to the playoffs consistently. Start really building something. And who's better than Bradley Beal? Not to mention that the Atlanta Hawks also have a ton of young pieces. Kevin Huerter, a couple of other guys as well that they could move along, as well as a lot of draft capital. They're not afraid to be making wielding and dealing trades. And if you have a backcourt of Bradley Beal and Trae Young, you could really make the argument that's one of the best, if not the best, offensive backcourts in the entire NBA. Especially in a weaker Eastern Conference where the 8th seed isn't even above 500. You could seriously start making the playoffs pretty consistently in Atlanta, and Trae Young's game would really start to grow. Now, it looks like that Bradley Beal might want out, and it looks like that the Atlanta Hawks might have something special with Trae Young. Again, if they can just match those two together, something big could be brewing in Atlanta. I think they're a sneaky dark horse option in the Bradley Beal sweepstakes. Now let's get into some big market teams. Let's start off with the Brooklyn Nets. Now everyone has been saying that the Brooklyn Nets are looking to make something become of a big three sort of. A lot of people have pegged Bradley Beal as the guy to be there. Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and Bradley Beal would certainly be the best trio in the East, in my opinion, above Giannis's teams, above any team that, the 76ers or the Celtics could put together. Again, that would be a really, really interesting. And the Nets have one of the biggest and best trade pieces, period, in the NBA, and that's Spencer Dinwiddie, who's almost a 20-point per game scorer. Now, Spencer Dinwiddie fits a lot more on a playoff contender, given his age, than a team like the Washington Wizards, but maybe if John Wall could come back and really emerge, you could sell that to the fan base, and Spencer Dinwiddie could be a guy that puts butts in seats and carries the load offensively to replace Bradley Beal. That is a really interesting spot, and I could totally see it happening. Again, Bradley Beal to the Nets makes a lot of sense. I don't know exactly what a trade would look like. people could speculate that could be something, along the lines of, Karis LeVert, Jared Allen, throwing in Spencer Dinwiddie and a ton of picks, a 2020 first, maybe a 2022 first, and they could get something in in return with Bradley Beal. That would be really interesting to see. It would be awesome to see as well. Could totally see it. Bradley Beal to the Brooklyn Nets makes a lot of sense. Let's flip the coin to the other New York team. I say this every time there's a potential move in the NBA. You cannot talk about a potential move in the NBA without talking about the New York Knicks. And usually I dismiss the Knicks, that there's no way they're going to get this guy, no way he's going to want anything. And even when I was talking about Victor Oladipo, I was saying, since Victor Oladipo's demands seem to be that he wants to win big in the playoffs and make as much money as possible, that it was extremely unlikely that he would be going to a team like the New York Knicks. Bradley Beal, on the other hand, he might want to actually be the guy to be a part of something big in New York. Again, if you can get Bradley Beal and pair him with an RJ Barrett, you could have something really big potentially brewing in New York. And now it would be interesting, what would it cost the Knicks to get rid or to move on from Bradley Beal? The Knicks are going to have a really, really high draft pick this offseason. Would I give up, let's say, the number 3, number 4, maybe even number 5 overall pick for Bradley Beal? I think I would, specifically in this draft. When it's kind of an unknown draft, not a lot of superstar big names, not like last year when it was like Zion, RJ, some other guys like that. Again, there's going to be some good guys coming out of this draft, don't get me wrong, guys like Anthony Edwards, but I don't think they could be up to Bradley Beal's level, and I would certainly consider that. So that might be the biggest trade piece that Washington would be interested in, specifically if they, get rid of Bradley Beal. They're moving into a full rebuild, and it's an open rebuild, so they would want a lot of draft capital. New York could potentially provide that. Again, the Knicks make a lot of sense here. I wouldn't list them as the favorite, but I think they have a better chance of getting Bradley Beal and wanting Bradley Beal versus Victor Oladipo, who might not want to go to the New York Knicks. How about the Denver Nuggets? Now, the Denver Nuggets is a really interesting team. Again, I love the Denver Nuggets. I mentioned before that I think they are a, dark horse team. They are one piece away, I think, from really reaching the level of the Lakers and the Clippers in the Western Conference and seriously being championship level teams. I love Nikola Jokic. I think he's the first or second best center in the entire league. Him or Karl Anthony Towns, take your pick. Best passing big man in the league, lost a ton of weight. I think he'll look really good in the Orlando bubble. I think the Nuggets will be really good. I like, other guys on the team like Jamal Murray as well. What if the Denver Nuggets had a trade package of Gary Harris, Michael Porter Jr., and a 2022 first round pick for Bradley Beal? Would you take that if you were Washington? I think given Michael Porter Jr.'s potential and some flashes that he's shown on the court for Denver, I think I would seriously consider that. And Denver and Bradley Beal make a ton of sense. Bradley Beal is a low-key type of guy, not afraid to play in a smaller market, just wants to really start winning big. And with the Denver Nuggets could have a big three of Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic, and Bradley Beal. The pick and rolls, man, between Jokic and Bradley Beal would be absolutely deadly. Again, Bradley Beal is like a 30-point per game scorer. Add that to the best offensive center in the league, first or second, only behind maybe Karl Anthony Towns. Definitely the best passing big in the league, one of the best shooting bigs in the league. That would be really interesting to see. It makes a ton of sense for the Denver Nuggets to go after Bradley Beal. Again, a trade package surrounding maybe Gary Harris, Michael Porter Jr., and like a 2020 or 2020. I don't think they have a pick that year. Maybe 2022 first round pick. Really, really interesting stuff, and it would make a ton of sense. All right, let's move on now to another team that is always in the rumors, and that's the Miami Heat. Again, Bradley Beal, what sparked this was interacting with a couple Heat players on Twitter, Jay Crowder, and a lot of people have been saying Bradley Beal wanted to go to the Miami Heat for a long time, even before he signed his half extension. A lot of people believed it. Heat fans are dying for him. Again, what would it cost the Miami Heat? Would they be willing to, remove a Bam Adebayo? I think he's more untouchable. But if they could offer a package surrounding Tyler Hero, Kendrick Nunn, maybe even a Duncan Robinson, two of those three guys, that's a tough deal to pass up on, especially if they throw in some picks as well. Tyler Hero looks like a really good, young, promising player. He's only 20 years old. Add him to a young core that Washington could build through the draft. You could have something really good there. I don't think Tyler Hero will get maybe necessarily all the way up to Bradley Beal level, but again, it's going to be hard to get value if you're the Wizards. Perfect value for, a guy like Bradley Beal who's been carrying your franchise the past 2-3 seasons. But again, the Heat are always in play when it comes to these big moves. They want to build another super team, like I talked about either in my last episode or 2 episodes ago with Giannis Antetokounmpo as a free agent in 2021. Big things are trying to happen in Miami. Wouldn't surprise me if Bradley Beal was on Pat Riley's short list of guys he would heavily want to go after. And we know Pat Riley is willing to wheel and deal for guys. Shaquille O'Neal obviously brought in LeBron and Chris Bosh and tore down the roster for that as well. They're not willing. They're willing to make trades. They're willing to be the guys who wheel and deal and do whatever it takes to get the best team on the court. Pat Riley is in win now mode. He is willing to move on from young players in order for a championship. Again, Pat Riley wants to win one more championship and then go home to Malibu, California and retire for the rest of his days. He's willing to move on from guys like Tyler Hero and Kendrick Nunn, I think, to get a guy like Bradley Beal. And man, if you got a core of Bradley Beal, Jimmy Butler, that would be incredible. They would be one of the best 1-2 punches in the league. And if you could keep one of the Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, Kendrick Nunn thing, as well as still keeping Bam Adebayo as well, could be one of the best teams in the East. Again, wouldn't surprise me at all if that is who Pat Riley was after all along. Let's go to the Chicago Bulls, who I think are another dark horse team. I think the Bulls, if they got who knows what this new general manager is like, right? He's coming from Denver, and Denver has shown a lot of interest in Bradley Beal recently. That's why I put them on this list and talked about them. Maybe that interest carries on to Chicago. Now, the Bulls have been looking for something. They just need another star again, and we'll be right back into the center of the basketball world. They're building some nice young players. I like Kobe White. I like him a lot. I like Lauri Markkanen. Could they move off one or even both of those guys to get a guy like Bradley Beal, put Chicago back on the map? Guys would want to play with Bradley Beal. Maybe Bradley Beal lures some free agents to Chicago and puts them back on the basketball world. Some people consider Chicago the basketball mecca, all that debate and everything like that. Chicago makes a ton of sense as a dark horse team. They have draft capital. Again, throwing a guy like Kobe White. All of a sudden now Washington might be really interested in sending Bradley Beal to Chicago. Would be really interesting to see. Again, they also have the money to pay him as well. That is a dark horse team. And finally, the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, I don't know how much the Lakers are going to go all in. I really do believe after this season, this roster is going to be redone again. I think it's going to be LeBron, Anthony Davis, and anybody else is up for grabs to be moved, okay? Because I don't think the Lakers are going to win a championship anymore. I talked about this in my last episode. After the loss of Rajon Rondo, they don't have any defensive guard now. Their defense is really weak now, in my opinion, especially when it comes to the guard position and the perimeter defense. They're really starting to mismatch against teams like the Celtics, against teams like specifically the Los Angeles Clippers, who I think might be able to take them in 7 now. Again, I said before, I thought it was the Lakers' year. I think it's more the Clippers' year now, after all these injuries and all of these things matching up and, getting on top of one after another for the Los Angeles Lakers. I think LeBron's going to want to redo this roster again, get more shooters, get more guys, and I think Kyle Kuzma's the big kind of X-factor trade piece. Do they have enough to get a Bradley Beal? I'm not sure. I don't want to count the Lakers and LeBron out of anything in clutch sports, obviously, but is a package surrounding Kyle Kuzma enough? I don't know. I don't know if it's more appealing than a Hawks trade package surrounding around Kevin Huerter, or even a Heat package surrounding around Tyler Hero, Nuggets with Michael Porter Jr. I'm listing off players that I like right now more than Kyle Kuzma, and it doesn't look great. Spencer Dinwiddie from the Nets. I don't know if the Lakers are going to be able to pull this off, but again, wouldn't surprise me. Anything can happen if the player just wants to go there. Now, it's going to be really interesting to see. Maybe Bradley Beal comes out and says he wants to go to the Lakers. That could change anything similar to what Anthony Davis did. But again, it's not going to be as easy as the AD trade. During the Anthony Davis trade, the Lakers had a lot of stuff to move around, a lot of trade pieces. Not as much anymore. Again, a trade package surrounding Kyle Kuzma, is that enough for Washington to bite? Who knows? Don't want to count LeBron out of anything. Those are my top destinations for Bradley Beal, who might want to leave the Wizards soon. We're going to take one final break. On the other side of it, I'm going to give you my top 10 most interesting teams in the NBA, the most interesting watches, in the NFL. In the NFL, the top 10 most interesting teams in the NFL with the best, storylines, most interesting, who I'm going to watch the most in the NFL this season. I'll be giving you those top 10 teams right after this.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network for the final segment of today's show. For the next 5 or so minutes, I want to talk about some of the most interesting teams in the NFL. I saw Colin Cowherd do this, and I kind of disagreed with some people, or some teams, on his list. These are my top 10 most interesting teams in the NFL who are must-watches this season, must-watch television, so let's just get right into it. For some honorable mentions, I have the Baltimore Ravens and Green Bay Packers, both really interesting teams. They just don't have a lot of major storylines. You know, for Green Bay, it's going to be the whole him and Jordan Love dynamic, and for the Baltimore Ravens, it's going to be Lamar Jackson. Can he make more strides as a passer? Again, must-watch television just because Lamar Jackson is must-watch television. He's incredible. He's electric, which is why I have him as an honorable mention. Didn't crack the top 10, but I just wanted to mention that. Some also interesting teams there. Number 10, Kansas City Chiefs. I know that they're must-watch television. I know they might seem low on this list. I have some more interesting storylines for the other 9 teams. But again, is Kansas City going to become a dynasty? Is this going to be legitimate? Are they really going to run it back? That's why they're on this list. I think they have a chance of doing it. I really do believe so. Again, Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league. Never out of it. I'm going to say this stat again. He won a Super Bowl before losing a game by more than 7 points. Absolutely ridiculous stuff. He's absolutely incredible. They're must-watch television. They come in at number 10. At number 9 is the Seattle Seahawks. As of right now, if the roster remains the same, I wouldn't keep them on this list. They're on this list under the assumption they're going to bring in Antonio Brown and Jadeveon Clowney, like a lot of people are hinting at. More AB than Clowney. If Antonio Brown gets put on the Seattle Seahawks, immediately that becomes a must-watch situation. What does Antonio Brown look like? How good will Russell Wilson be with him? Is Antonio Brown crazy? All that sort of good stuff. That's why they're on this list at number 9 as one of the most interesting teams. Again, if we can get Antonio Brown on the Seattle Seahawks and Russell Wilson would be incredible. And again, I really do believe it's their year. Russell Wilson's my favorite for MVP, and I think the Seahawks have a real chance of winning the Super Bowl this season as long as they get a guy like AB and Jadeveon Clowney. At number 8, I have the Denver Broncos, who I think could be the big boom team in the NFL. Again, I'm really referencing those games, those 2 games. Broncos, Chiefs are going to be absolutely must-watch television. They're going to be shootouts. I think Drew Lock's a really good player. He's the first guy that's going to be a lot of people that come out that want to be the next Patrick Mahomes that teams are drafting because he looks like him on the field-wise, has that elastic arm, good arm talent, can throw from different platforms, things like that. Reminds me a lot of him. Jordan Love is another guy who just did that as well. Again, Drew Lock and that orange blur offense, as Denver Bronco fans are calling it. KJ Hamler, Cortland Sutton on top of Jerry Jeudy, who was the best receiver in the draft in my opinion. Noah Fant as well. Melvin Gordon, Phillip Lindsay, good offensive line, good defense. Vic Fangio's second year. Absolutely must-watch television. Going to be so much fun to watch the Denver Broncos. They come in at number 8. At number 7, another potential pop team, Arizona Cardinals. Year 2 of the Cliff Kingsbury offense. DeAndre Hopkins is there now. How will Kyler Murray look? Will he look even better than he did last year? Not to mention they're going to have fantastic games against Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles Rams. All these teams, but really surrounding around Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray, year 2. You know that this is going to be a major storyline for the rest of their career, considering their joint at the hip, especially after the Cardinals moved off of Josh Rosen. It's always going to be a storyline. So coming in at number 7, I have the Arizona Cardinals. At number 6, I have the Miami Dolphins with Tua Tagovailoa. I want to see Tua play. Who knows when that will happen? But once Tua comes on the field, it's going to be must-watch television. The Tua story is so incredible. Went from the best quarterbacks in college football history. Wasn't even taken first overall this year because of the hip injury. How will Tua look post-hip injury? How will he look as the franchise quarterback of the Miami Dolphins? Plus, I'm fascinated with Brian Flores. He might be the first Belichick sort of disciple/clone that really starts to pan out and build something good in the team that he is in Miami. Again, Tua Tagovailoa, the Tua Tagovailoa story is going to be absolutely incredible to watch watch throughout the next decade, hopefully, or so, depending on injuries and things like that. So as soon as Tua steps on the field, that's a must-watch story. The Dolphins coming in at number 6. Number 5, the Cleveland Browns, man. It's their year. I know everyone says it's their year, but again, this is Baker Mayfield's make or break year. They have the talent to go to the Super Bowl. They have the talent to be really, really good and really challenge the Ravens in that division and challenge some other teams in the AFC. I like Kevin Stefanski. Again, 2 good backs, 2 good tight ends, 2 good tackles, 2 good running backs, 2 good corners too, man, 2 good defensive ends. Can Baker Mayfield get it together? Can he be the quarterback that everybody thought he was going to be out of college and the quarterback that he showed glimpses of his rookie year? Can he do it? That is the big question. Cleveland coming in right now at number 5. Most interesting teams. They're really going to be an interesting watch. Again, top 5. Cleveland Browns, Kevin Stefanski, Baker Mayfield. Can it work? Can Cleveland finally get over the hump? Number 4, Cincinnati Bengals. I don't think they're going to win anything. I don't think they're going to be a great team. I think they're in an impossible division. And again, I've talked about this with Joe Burrow, why it might struggle. This Joe Burrow whole story might struggle because of how bad that team could potentially be on the roster. Bad coaching, bad offensive line, not great receiving core, terrible tight end core, terrible defense. Not to mention you're a tough division with the Steelers, Browns, and Ravens. But again, it's still television, man. You gotta watch Joe Burrow. How is he gonna turn out? You watched Joe Burrow in college, didn't you? You watched every LSU game. You watched all of those big moments where Joe Burrow threw 63 touchdowns. What is he gonna do in the NFL? Big translation. Can he carry the Bengals? Can he be that same quarterback he was in college in the pros? I would say no. I'm still gonna watch the hell out of it. I'm still gonna watch almost all of the Bengals highlights, all of the Bengals games. I gotta watch what Joe Burrow is gonna do in the NFL, man. Gonna be so interesting to see. They come in at number 4. Number 3, America's team, the Dallas Cowboys. What is Dak Prescott going to do under Mike McCarthy? Will Dallas rebound? Will they start winning the division? Can they get over the hump against Philly again? Zeke, CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup. Good offensive line. Fantastic offensive weapons. Dak's got to tear it up, man. Now that he also didn't get an extension, I didn't mention this in my first segment, it's a prove-it year for him too. He's going to prove to the Cowboys why he deserves that money coming into next offseason when he's going back up to Jerry Jones' door, knocking up again, asking for that money again. Can Dak Prescott, recapture some of those, first half of last season MVP moments? Who knows? Going to be a lot of fun to see. Again, Mike McCarthy as well. And the Cowboys are always must-watch television. They're going to crack the top 3. Number 2, man, they weren't on this before the Cam Newton signing. The New England Patriots, I got to see what Bill looks like without Tom. I really got to see what Bill looks like without Tom. Also, Cam Newton now, the redemption tour. What is he going to look like in a Patriot uniform? Come on, man. You know that's must-watch television. You know that it's going to look so sick. How, Cam Newton running around, new Josh McDaniels offense, more dynamic Patriot offense, something we've never seen before in the Navy, red, and blue. Cam Newton to the Patriots. What is Bill going to look like without Tom? They're number 2. And number 1, the flip side of that coin. You already knew Tampa Bay Buccaneers were the most interesting to watch this season. Brady, Gronk, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Ronald Jones, O.J. Howard. I already mentioned Gronk, Shaq Barrett, good defense, Bruce Arians, sandals, flip-flops, laid back. Brady Breeze twice a year. How is Tom going to do with so many storylines? How is Tom going to do without Bill? How is Brady and Gronk going to look this year? How is Gronk going to look after a year of football? Drew versus Tom twice a year now. Who's going to win that division? Can Brady become the first quarterback ever to win a Super Bowl while it's in their home stadium as the Super Bowl's in Tampa this year? Again, what is Brady going to look like without Bill? So many cool storylines in the NFL this year, but the biggest one for me is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You knew this. I'm watching every single game of Tampa Bay this year. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast. Again, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm Alex Masfer. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's show and watching it all the way through. Again, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, leave us a 5-star review, and follow us on all social media platforms. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next episode.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.